wig? I'm confused.
He's making a Chad Powers reference.
Yeah, but I didn't have a wig, so I'm still confused.
All right, welcome to the weekly Coach Franklin press conference. We'll start with an opening statement from Coach and then go to Rich Scarcella with the first question.
Appreciate you guys being here. A couple things. I want to cover one thing before we get into the previous game. It's okay to talk about who we're honoring, right? So we'll honor the 1982 National Championship team. I don't want to go out of order if it was supposed to be announced somewhere else. We'll honor the 1982 National Championship team at halftime on Saturday, which will be really cool. 40-year anniversary. So awesome that we're going to have an opportunity to do that with our letterman. From a Auburn game perspective, we won the turnover battle, which obviously was significant, talking about +4 in that situation. Penalties, we did not win that one, minus 19 yards. We got to be better there. Drive start, we did win. The turnovers obviously played a big part in that. The sack battle, we won. We didn't talk about that enough after the game. How come we didn't talk about that? 0 sacks. Let's talk about that, no? All right, just messing around with you guys. I guess my joke was as bad as yours. Explosive play battle. We met our goal on offense, but did not meet our goal on defense. And then when you talk about players of the games and things like that, offensively, we went with our offensive line. And when we talk about offensive line, we're talking about really who we view as 7 starters. That's Olu, Landon, Juice, Sal, Caden, Bryce Effner, and Hunter Norzad, guys that are all playing a ton for us. Defensively, Jair Brown and Adisa Isaac. And then on special teams, Jake Pinniger. Also cool that Jair Brown was the defensive player of the week in the Big Ten, and Nick Singleton was the freshman player of the week in the Big Ten. Some other notes just briefly, some positives. I don't know if, I think you guys noticed, we've talked about this before. We do shares at the hotel Friday night. It's usually a player and a staff member get up and kind of share some things about their background, that maybe the room doesn't know personally, and then talk about, the game of football overall and the game that we're playing the next day. And I just thought Hunter Norzad and Dan Connor both did a phenomenal job Friday night at the hotel. I really think it kind of set the tone for the whole weekend, and I was very appreciative of what they shared and how they shared it. I thought the 4th and 1 to start the game, I thought that was a critical, situation in the game. Went for it, being aggressive on 4th down, which has been good to us to this point of the season. But our defense having the offense's back, holding them to a field goal, I felt like that was a critical situation in the game. We had a big discussion as a staff before the season started. We actually had a big discussion with the team as well about how we want to handle 4th down, because it's not a offensive decision. It's not a defensive decision. It's a team decision that we all factor into special teams as well. I thought we handled hydration, noise, crowd noise, atmosphere, pretty well overall. Obviously, we had a spike in penalties, and that factored in a little bit. But overall, I was pleased with how we handled those things. It was great that on offense, we had 17 players play double-digit snaps. 28 players on defense with double-digit snaps, 45 overall. Areas for growth, we got to eliminate the pre-snap and post-snap penalties. We got to be better with our kick locations. That's on punt and kickoff. We got to be better there. So getting into Central Michigan, I thought it was interesting, kind of looking historically. I was shocked that we'd only ever played them one other time. It just seemed strange to me in our history to only play them one time. Got a ton of respect for Coach McElwain and his career. My time in the Northwest, my wife is from the Northwest. Obviously, my time at Washington State, a lot of these guys that not only Coach McElwain, but on his staff, he's from Montana. You look at his career, he's done a bunch of really good things. and excited about this opportunity to compete with Coach McElwain in Central Michigan. Offensively, another name, a Northwest guy, but another big-time name in college football, big family name in Paul Petrino. On the offensive side of the ball, obviously their family and specifically Paul have a great history with knowing how to move the ball. On top of that, his 9 years as head coach experience at the University of Idaho as well. We've been impressed. We've been impressed on that side of the ball with their running back, Lou Nichols, kid out of Detroit, Michigan. Their quarterback, Daniel Richardson, is an undersized guy, but very, very productive. And then their wide receiver, number 0, another young man from Detroit, big kid. Defensively, Rob Akey is a guy I've known for a long time. He's got ties to that Washington State tree that I'm a little bit of a part of. I've known Rob for a long time, got a ton of respect for him. He's been a long-time defensive coordinator and does a nice job. Guys that we're impressed with, their defensive end, number 9. Their safety, number 3, and then their cornerback, who's a local kid, Dante Kent, who's playing well for them, was a freshman All-American for them last year. And then on special teams, Keith Murphy, I don't know him as well, but Keith has done a good job for them. We're very, very impressed with them on tape, what they do. They're sound. They're consistent, and we're going to have to be ready for what they bring. And then their punt returner is a guy that we need to be aware of, is averaging almost 8 yards of return. Jordan Williams has done some good things. So overall, excited about this opportunity this week to get better throughout our week of preparation. I thought Sunday was good. Monday's the players' day off, and obviously coaches, game plan perspective. Then today's our first opportunity to get out there. So open up the questions.
Rich Scarcella, Reading Eagle, then Mark Wogenrich.
Good afternoon, James. How are you today?
Good, Rich. How are you, buddy?
I'm really good. Thanks. James, in Indy at the Big Ten kickoff and at Media Day at Penn State, you said you weren't ready to bang your fist on the table about the offensive line and declare them ready. Through 3 games, how would you assess their performance, and where do you think they're headed?
Yeah, I'm still not ready. I'm gonna hold off. Like I also mentioned that you guys will clearly tell me how they're playing. But obviously I do think this past weekend with 0 sacks and be able to run the ball the way we ran the ball and being on the road and handle crowd noise, which can be challenging for an offensive line, that I do think it was a step in the right direction. But we still have work to do, and I'm still not ready to pound the table. But I probably won't be all year long, because I know as soon as I say something positive, something won't go well. So I'm gonna hold my thoughts.
Mark Wogenrich, all Penn State, then Frank Bodani.
Hey, Mark.
Hi, James. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. The hard-hit hammer guys are carrying around. Whose idea was that? Who made it, and why'd you do it this year?
It was just, Manny is something that Manny brought with him and wanted to do, kind of the big hit of the week. We're doing something similar on offense with the finisher award. We did it last year as well, but trying to continue to build on that. Who's got the most physical block of the game? Now, where it came from and where they ordered it online or whatever, I don't know, or whether Manny made it in his wood shop in his basement. I'm not sure of those details. But just trying to reinforce the physical aspect on defense and the physical aspect on offense and emphasizing toughness.
Frank Bodani, York Daily Record, then Mike Gross.
Hey, good afternoon, James. Hope you're well.
Hey, Frank, you too, man.
Yeah, thanks. Brenton Strange, your tight end. Can you talk a little bit about his development, not just as a receiver, maybe as a blocker? It seemed like he had a couple really important blocks. Have you seen a change in him? Is there a big development difference from last year with him? And
yeah, I think he's playing his best football right now. He's an older guy who's played a bunch of football for us already, so I don't know if I necessarily would say a big change. This was expected for him and really that whole group. You guys have heard me talk about that whole group for a while. But I do think he's playing really good football for us, which is I think has been really impactful. You know, we talk about the O-line all the time in the run game, but our tight ends I think are having a big impact for it as well. I think Brenton's playing as good as any tight ends in the country, and what I mean by that is I see these awards going. You know, I thought Stout was the best punter in the country last year. Why? Because the only stat that matters in punting is net punting. If you punt the ball 93 yards and they return it 75 yards because you outkicked your coverage with no hang time, it doesn't matter. It's net punting. And I think Stout was number one in that in the country last year. I think it's similar with tight ends. If we're just going to award tight ends individually because of receiving yards and receptions, to me there's so much more to being a tight end than that. And I think Brenton's playing really well-rounded tight end play right now. And I think the real, true football people understand that. I think that's going to help us throughout this year, you know, offensively. I know it helps our defense having to go against them every single day at practice and really that whole group. And I also know it's going to help Brenton in terms of his future. You know, whenever that opportunity comes at the next level, I think it's going to help him because so many of these tight ends in high school, so many of these tight ends in college are not tight ends. They're big wideouts.
Mike Gross, Lancaster Newspapers, then Donnie Collins.
Hi, James. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Couple of things. One, a quick local note, for me, if you can. How's Anthony Ivy doing? That's the first thing. And then the other one is the Chad Powers, Eli Manning thing. How did that come about? Why did he choose Penn State? What kind of, you know, any kind of behind the scenes thing that you could share with us about that?
Yeah, so a couple things. To your first point, Ivy's doing really well. You know, I'm proud of him. His development and growth and evolution since we first started recruiting him to now, I'm really proud of him. He's doing really well in school. He is making plays on the football field. He's probably further along as a football player than we anticipated. He's made a bunch of big plays. He has earned our coaches' respect. I know he's earned the defense's respect being over there on the D squad. I think he's got a bright future. And, you know, obviously whenever we can keep a really good player in the state of Pennsylvania home, I think it makes a ton of sense for everybody. And I'm really proud of him. You know, he's still got work to do like a lot of them do, but I think the people that read your newspaper, I think the people in the state of Pennsylvania, when, you know, they're going to be happy with Anthony Ivy throughout his career and what he's able to do here. When it comes to Chad Powers and Eli, yeah, we got a pretty good relationship with the Manning family. You know, Sean has been able to go do the Manning Passing Academy every year, which is great. And we've had quarterbacks before Sean. It seems like Sean's been here from the beginning, but we've had quarterbacks pretty much every year be able to go to the Manning Passing Academy, which is an unbelievable event. I wish I could go. It'd be a really cool event to be a part of. I've been able to get to know Archie through that, as well as the National Football Foundation and some other things. Obviously, you know, you could make the argument or not. You know, it could be a statement. You know, they're like the first family of college football, or football in general. The impact that family has had has been significant and pretty cool. So for me, when they reached out, about doing this. Obviously, we wanted to be a part of it because I think Eli's done a great job with all of this. He's also a regional guy, lives in New Jersey, obviously did tremendous things with the Giants. So when he reached out about doing this and they reached out about doing this, all those things factored in. But at the end of the day, for me, I want to make sure that it wasn't going to disturb our process of what we needed to do and not become a distraction. So the week that we did that, do you remember?
It was the first week of school, Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was our first week of school. And really they were able to do 99% of it kind of without messing up our normal routine. I think I had to give them 10 minutes of my time, which took time away from either lunch or my walk, which was good. So once I was comfortable with the fact that we were going to be able to do that and it not impact our normal routine or become a distraction, then we were all about it, because most of it was going to happen at our run-on tryout, which is something that's kind of separate from our normal routine. The coaches don't normally go to that. And then it was also cool because we were able to couple it with, what you guys saw, we were able to couple it with Barney, being able to get his scholarship, which was cool. So it just worked out, and it was something I thought was kind of unique and different, but also wasn't gonna cause us any distractions or issues. And then he was able, whenever you're able to have somebody like that on campus, whether it's a coach or a former player or somebody that can get up in front of the team and deliver a message. Obviously, he's been able to win at the very, very highest level. So that was a good opportunity there as well. So it just made sense.
Donnie Collins, Scranton Times-Tribune, then Corey Geiger.
Hey, James.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well. It seems you're running a little bit more on offense out of those sets where Clifford's under center, the running back is 7 yards behind him, you got the tight end acting as the fullback, and you're running downhill. How successful do you think that's been? How has it added to the physicality on offense you were talking about earlier, and how has it helped the offensive line?
Yeah, so a couple things. I think it has helped our physicality, not only of our offense, but also of our defense. I think the strength of our tight end room plays a factor in that as well. I don't think you do this if you don't have the depth and the strength of a tight end room like we do. The other thing I'll hit, just to kind of reinforce a point we've talked about before, again, the quarterback under center, the running back at 7 yards, and when the quarterback goes to hand it to him, he gets it about 4.5 yards deep, which is the same depth that you get it out of the gun. But I do agree the ability to run the quarterback sneak is the one difference of being under center. I also think it does help you in your play action pass game. I think it helps you sell it a little bit more. But I do think it's been valuable, and us being able to run or pass or play action pass or 2-minute, those things have always been really important to me all the way back to our time at Vanderbilt, not just for your offense and the difficulty to defend, but also your defense getting some of those things throughout the year in good periods, so that you don't get into a situation you've never seen under center hard ball runs, and now you got to defend them, when you're playing, a team that is like that, or a spread. You're never seeing spread because you're all, 13 personnel, 12 personnel, heavy sets, pounding people, and you never give the defense the spread looks as well. So having that balance is something that's always been important to me. I think, obviously, your point and others' points is, depending on who you hire to be the offense and defensive coordinator, it's not always an exact fit. And obviously you can have some influence in adjusting some of the things that people do scheme-wise on offense, defense, and special teams. But you also hire people for a reason, to play to their strengths and things like that. So it's a fine line. between those things and how much you influence it as the head coach. But if you look all the way back to our time at Vanderbilt, this is really kind of who we've been.
Our last question on the Zoom will be Corey Geiger, and then we'll open it up to questions here in the room.
James, you just beat Auburn, and then 2 days later you get all this Chad Power stuff, which keeps the program in the news. We all know who Hingle McCringleberry is. How important is it that Penn State is kind of cool, that people look at these things and it helps your brand? It helps keep Penn State in the news with younger people. They can relate to these guys. Funny, and it's not just all about, hey, a football game.
Yeah, I think your point is a good one. This is a game. It should be fun for the players, for the coaches, for our fans, for our alumni, for the community. And although the videos that everybody puts out, the hype videos and all those types of things are good and cool and they serve a purpose as well, providing other opportunities to kind of peek behind the curtain and show some personality and allow people to see some of these things and have some fun and whether it's in the summer canceling a practice and going to the pool or bowling or out Bald Eagle Lake or whatever it is, you do need to have some things that are a change of pace. And whether that's internally for your program or whether that's externally to give people maybe different content and different things to look at, there's value in it. Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. But again, it can't be at the expense of what you're here to do, which is to educate young people and put your team in the best position to win. So that's I think you just got to make sure you don't lose sight of what you're here to do and mix those fun things in from time to time when the opportunities present themselves.
Mark.
Hey, James, thanks for your time today.
You as well.
Hey, you've been fortunate enough to have some young players blow up kind of on a national stage in your career at Penn State. How do you prepare kids for that, and how is Nick Singleton dealing with what's kind of coming at him over these last few weeks? Thanks.
Yeah, I think a lot of these young players are more prepared for this type of stuff than ever before, just with the way media coverage has changed, the way social media has changed, the opportunities that some of these high-profile young players get when it comes to travel or all-star games or exposure that you really didn't have before, at least not on this level in my mind. From a national perspective, it may happen locally. So I think they're more prepared for that. I think some of the policies that we have in place, I think help because it takes some things off their plate. I know you guys don't always necessarily agree with that, but it takes some things off their plate. And then we try to do things in the summer and throughout the year where we're educating them and preparing them, for life after football, for life outside of football, and trying to prepare them for as many things that will come. Trying to include the parents in the process too, so they can be helpful. But I think right now Nick's handling things pretty well. I also think that is a little bit his personality. Like the players kind of give him a hard time because after he scores a touchdown or something, they say he has no swag. He's just no swag, all substance. Doesn't wear gloves. They love to give him a hard time, but it doesn't faze him. I think he said we've been counting. I think he said 17 words since he's been at Penn State. He's very steady Eddie. He's very level-headed. He doesn't get too high. He doesn't get too low. And I think kind of how he was raised with his family as well as the program that he came from, Governor Mifflin, I think have done a really good job in preparing for him for this as well. And I think the relationships that he has built with our staff has helped with that as well. So far, so good.
Andrew?
Hey, Coach, back here. I guess I have a two-part question here. A couple years ago, the NCAA changed the red shirt policies, allowing you to play a lot of these younger guys more now than you would have in years past. Do you have that in the back of your mind when you're putting guys out there right now? And should we see fewer younger guys moving forward as you try to preserve eligibility?
Yes, I think that's a fair point. There's going to be a strategy to it, right? There's going to be some guys that we play early. They show that, they're going to have a significant role for us, and we're going to keep playing them. And then there's going to be other guys. We talked about a guy this morning that has played because maybe there's been some bumps and bruises, and he's actually done okay, but we still think the best thing to do is probably to redshirt him if we can. So, your point is about the 4-game rule and trying when we can to be strategic in how we use those 2 games, but sometimes it doesn't always play out that way. This young man's already played in 2 games. I would have liked for one of the games to be this week, but because of some injuries, we had to play him earlier. So, but that is a conversation. That is a conversation, and there is more flexibility now based on the NCAA rule changes that help with that.
Sauber.
James, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. You mentioned giving teams different looks offensively, obviously going under the gun, or going under center and going under gun. You seem to do that more defensively this year, too, with the looks that you're giving. How does that help with the aggressiveness when you can put different personnel packages out there to add some layer of confusion to it? And how does the depth at corner and safety add to that as well?
So you're just talking about different, more personnel groupings on defense, is what you're saying? Okay. Yeah, I think it's more. We have gone kind of a 3-down lineman look in the past. I think the difference is, right, where it's probably a little bit different this year is who are those body types that are out there. There's been, I think, a lot of conversation. Chris has given me a heads up about 7 DBs on the field. That's because we feel like our DBs are our strength this year, where coming into the season, there was more question marks at linebacker than there was at DB. So that will change year to year based on just getting your best players on the field. And these different personnel groupings also help with that, right? You may be able to play a kid earlier in his career because he may not be able to do these 2 or 3 things, but he can do this. So that's a factor in it as well. But I think it probably feels that way more than, in my mind, the reality of it, just because of the strength of our DB room, if that's fair.
Hey, James, how's it going?
Hey, Ben.
I got new glasses. I do not have transition lenses anymore, so you're on your own in that department.
I don't have transition.
I thought you did at one point.
Yeah, but you said I got rid of them too, just like you said. That was like maybe 7 to 8 years ago. But so when you said so you're on your own, I'm not. I'm not on my own. We're
all right,
together.
I've joined you then.
We're together.
I was the
on
last
this.
holdout.
Yeah.
You have a 26-day period where you're going to play 2 games between right after the end of Auburn and the end of the bye week or the off week or whatever you want to call it. Do you measure that time in days or practices?
Yeah, fair question. I would say really both. You're looking at, it's funny because we talked about it this morning. Manny brought up some things in the staff meeting this morning about it. And, I think we're going to tweak some of the things that we do during the bye week, something we spent a lot of time in the off season studying, and then brought it up again this week. Because you can have a plan in the off season about the tweaks, but then you also want to say, okay, where are we at? How does it make sense? So I think we're kind of looking at it as both. Okay, we got this period of time. This is the time we usually give the players off. This is the time that the coaches usually go recruiting. And then how are we going to use these days? Are we using these days as just developmental practices to get better at Penn State? Are they getting a head start on our next opponent? And what's the sweet spot of the balance of those 2 things? So for us, we're going to try to do a little bit of both. We're going to do some good work because that speed work I think is really important. But we're probably going to spend some more time on our opponents than maybe we have in the past, and maybe a little bit different way of kind of looking at it. And then probably not be out there very long. Short, quick practices, get on and off the field. and then have a developmental aspect of it as well for the young guys that haven't played. So we're looking at that complete window of time. And then like we do with most things in football, how do we maximize it from a current roster perspective, from a future roster perspective, and also what's going to put you in the best position to take advantage of that bye week by getting a head start on at least your next opponent, if not multiple opponents.
Daniel?
I also think that's also where you see some of these changes in staff sizing in football. That helps with that as well, because guys are able to get ahead.
Afternoon, James.
How you doing?
Doing well. Katron Allen, on the latest roster update, he was listed at 201 pounds. I think he came in around 225 back in December. What have you seen in his physical development since he's been here? Is this kind of the player you thought that you were getting, or has anything changed with that? And what do you make of his performance in these first 3 weeks?
It's funny you say that, because I was kidding around about his nickname, Fat Man, right? You know, he's less and less of his nickname. But yeah, you know, I've been, you know, obviously coming from a program like IMG, he understood how to compete, you know, in the backfield for carries, play a national schedule, you know, for the type of competition. But I do think even with the really good training that they do at a place like IMG, he's probably changed his body as much as anybody in our program, him and probably Malik McNeil. I don't know if did I tell you guys about Malik? Did I? Yeah, I think Malik has lost, I think like 47 or 53 pounds since being on campus, and not a long period of time. And that's really without us even emphasizing it. I think he went from like 281 to whatever that number I said is less. Katron, just looking at him, he just physically looks different. And I think with that, he is quicker, he's faster, he's more explosive. I just think he's playing really confident, really good football right now. And I think you'll see him gradually put weight back on, but it will be the right weight. And right now, he's thriving in a lot of ways. You know, he's somewhat quiet guy and not the most expressive guy. So to see him on Saturday, for me, almost like a you know, father figure, or kind of looking at these guys as your sons, to watch that kid smile and his whole face light up and the team react to him is cool, is really cool. And he's really starting to break out of his shell, and I'm really proud of him. He's a guy that's killed it academically since he's stepped on campus. He's just thriving at Penn State. I'm really happy for him.
Neil?
James, one more on the Mannings, if you would. Did you guys know it was coming out this weekend? Did they work with you, or did you have any input into when that would be released?
No, we had no input in when it was released, and I don't even think it's really been released yet. Like, they put some things out. I guess they call them teasers in the business. You guys would know that better than me. There's probably been more put out than I thought was going to put out. Someone sent it to me that it was out on social media, and then Chris said, yeah, we just got an email from them that they were going to put some things out as teasers for the show. There's obviously a lot more content in the show that I hope people watch, because it was pretty cool and it was funny. But there's a decent amount of it out there. But literally, we didn't know exactly when it would come out. We had a good idea when we thought it would come out based on what they had told us. The turnaround was probably a little bit faster than we anticipated, but we didn't know until the morning of that some of it was going to start to get leaked out as a teaser, if that's the correct term.
It is. Last two questions. We'll go to Bob and then T. Frank.
Hello, James.
Hey, Bob.
I wanted to ask you about Abdul Carter, your freshman linebacker.
Yep.
Why has he been able to? It seems like he's been able to hit the ground running in a very short period of time. And how far has he come since August? Because he's only played 3 games, and it already looks like he's very comfortable out there.
Yeah, it starts with he's like freakishly fast, freakishly strong, and doesn't have the body of a normal high school linebacker coming in. You know, I remember talking to him, you know, throughout the recruiting process after he had signed, and, you know, him and his dad were asking about like weight. And I'm like, you're plenty big right now. Like, I think they felt like they had to put on more weight. And I was like, no, you're plenty big enough right now. It's about strength and things like that. You know, but I will say a couple things. You know, I think his dad specifically and his family have done a really good job of raising him. One of the things that's really helped him, obviously, he's got these physical traits that we talked about, but his dad talked about his maturity and his focus, and he's exactly right. His maturity and focus for a guy his age is impressive. Very disciplined young man, comes from a disciplined family. I know mom is really happy that he's now at Penn State, because when we went to do the home visit, and I'm not exaggerating, you walk into the house, and when you first walk into the house, hardwood floors, and the weight room is set up, getting him ready for Penn State right when you walk into the house in the living room, and he's like power cleaning and dropping the barbell on hardwood floors. And I know she was happy when he came to Penn State because she was able to get that stuff, I think, back into the basement, I think is where they told me it was. But just very focused, very determined, very driven, and just like Dad told me, very mature and focused. And you combine that with his physical traits, then you got a chance. Because you guys have heard me say before, there's guys that are physically ready, but they're not mentally ready, or they're physically ready and mentally ready, but they're not emotionally ready. You know, he's really, you know, shown that he's been ready in a lot of those different areas. And I also think that, you know, LaSalle High School and that program did a really good job of preparing him as well. And, you know, just like his dad said, when this thing started trending in this direction, you know, it just makes sense. You know, if you know, you can stay close to home, get a world-class education, play big-time football. And one of the big things that I think people undervalue sometimes is his support system. You know, he's got a support system that he's had his whole life that has helped him get to this stage, and that support system's still able to be a part of it. You know, I see his dad up here all the time. So, so it's been pretty cool, and I would say that we're not surprised since we've been able to you know, be around him and see and hear his testing numbers when he arrived on campus, and then his approach in the weight room and with summer camp and so on and so forth.
T. Frank?
Hey, James, over here.
Hey, T.
I'm glad you mentioned the weight bench because I did an interview with Abdul during high school, and I swear, I was like, is that weight bench in his living room? And he was on the bench during the interview.
Was that like a Zoom call?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, literally right when you walk in. Like, a lot of you guys probably been in some of those Philadelphia neighborhoods, and you open up the front door and it's the living room, and it goes back into the kitchen, and then from there, and then right to the left, you go up the stairs, upstairs. And literally, as soon as you walked in, it was right there. And it wasn't like sometimes some of these things are like for show, like you're doing the interview, so you sit on the weight bench. I can guarantee it was not for show.
I took that from that. How much more can he handle mentally? Because you mentioned him playing fast and getting to this point because of that maturity. How much more do you think he can handle? And then secondly, where's Nittany on that trajectory?
Yeah, I think he can handle more, but I think you have to be careful, because if not, you get greedy, right? You have a true freshman that's having success, and you start putting more and more on his plate, and then he doesn't have the same type of success, because again, it's not just learning the defense, it's learning, you know, the offense and all the adjustments that take place when people trade or shift to tight end, or when they motion the back, or when they motion the receiver, or when they end up in unbalanced, or FSL, which is formation in the sideline, or some people call it FIB, formation into the boundary, and how that affects your rules. And that's what people are trying to do with motions and shifts and things like that, right? They're trying to give the linebackers and the defense indecision. So for us, we want to continue to, help him grow and evolve. But it's always that fine line that you don't do too much that, now he's thinking more than he's playing. And right now he's playing pretty well. So, we'll continue to look at that, but it's just a fine line of how much more we put on his plate. Because each week there'll be a new challenge with who we're playing and how much they do offensively. And then Nittany, there's a little bit less, for a defensive lineman in terms of learning. But I think you guys have seen, he is physically ready and prepared to play. Another high school, as we know with McDonough High School, we've had a ton of success with players from that high school coming here and thriving. Part of that's because I think McDonough High School does a great job. But we've worked out really well. Those kids have come here and have been prepared academically, physically prepared, mentally prepared, and have adjusted well. And I also think the number of kind of big brothers that he has to kind of help with that process has been good too. So I think you'll see his opportunities, continue to grow as the year goes on and his success. But he's also another mature kid, physically mature, emotionally mature kid. He's always been super focused, where he's maybe different than others. And I don't know how much this has been covered. Nittany is actually from Delaware, and he boarded at McDonough. He was a boarding student. So he also has the aspect like this isn't his first time away from home like some of these guys that had to make that adjustment. He's already made that adjustment, which has been helpful. He's also been one of the guys that I think you guys have heard me talk about in the past. Like he had his own dorm room at McDonough, and that was a big part in the recruiting process, which a lot of schools that we recruit against either have athletic dorms or football-specific dorms. Auburn just built a football dorm, which people are going to say, well, you're not allowed to do that. There's a way to do it within the rules and still get the same thing accomplished. And that was a big part in the recruiting process. We lost a kid a few years ago because we didn't have singles for the football team like other schools do. That kid got drafted and now is playing in the NFL, and we almost lost Nittany over it. He's been really good and is adjusting well.
Thank you, Coach. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.